Hi, my name is Keith Miles. I'm a management consultant and author. I specialize in the area of strategy execution and organizational change. Today, we're going to continue our digital transformation leadership series. It's got a few essentials that you need because we're all trying to leverage digital outcomes to make our organizations successful and bring them into the new economy as strongly as we can. And that's great, but it's a change and it's going to require you to know a few things, some essentials that I'm going to bring to you in this series. Today, we're going to talk about culture. Next week, leadership, viewpoints, how to activate processes, how to accelerate time to positive outcome, and then how to engage talent. And then we're going to sum it up at the end. So that's a series. We're going to talk about culture. And why about culture, Keith? Well, culture is actually how you lead. And unless you understand the foundational aspect of culture, you can't lead effectively through this transformation. So that's where we're going. We're going to make you successful as a leader by bringing you some information today that you probably have never heard about culture. Culture is really about reinforced behaviors. You've heard that before, but I'm going to bring some other information here. So reinforce, is it formal, informal? Well, it's both. As organizations proceed, people have a list in their heads of what's accepted, what's not. It's an informal pattern of activity that's reinforced over time by all types of leaders there in the organization. And it doesn't take long. You know, after you join an organization for a minute or two or a moment or two, you go, oh, you get a picture of what the culture is like. When my organization was only 5 or 6 people, we were considering hiring this very talented executive, but a couple of my staff came to me and said, I don't think that person really fits our culture. Well, our organization only had 5 or 6 people. I said, how do we get a culture? Where'd that come in? And so it starts small, but organizations have a culture, and it's what behaviors reinforced. And now there is quite a move today that says culture is really about reinforcing messaging, and it's about communication. I'm not quite there yet. It is to a degree communication. Of course, you need to tell people what you're doing. Absolutely need to do that. But it's not about emphasizing words. And I did a 72 organization study for my master's thesis. And what I found really determined what I believe about this. The evidence said that people who reinforced behaviors and held people accountable for what they wanted did very well. The people who relied on just persistent messaging, they didn't do well at all. Significant difference in progress among the 72 organizations. So the other thing is that people, I don't think, understand the time element of culture. And that is so critical, so critical. Keith, what are you talking about? What's this time thing? Well, if I look today, that's now, and then look back a year, and then 3 years, and then even farther, here's how culture maps to that. Because culture has 3 main aspects, 3 of them. And they're going to weight this first one. And so current leaders' actions, what you say, what you do. And yes, and that's really effective in the short term. And people say, oh, words, yes. But I remember one time in an organization, some staff people came to the lady who we worked with and said, we had made a positive change in one of their manager's behavior. And they said, now, is this a speech? Because speeches only last 3 weeks around here. The impact is temporary. And so words are okay, but it's not as important or as influential as we often think. And so what people are really looking for is what you do, what you hold accountable, and that's the actions. And what happens is, because there's often a lag between these two, we encourage a wait and see approach where they go, and they listen to what we say, and they wait to see what we're going to do. And that's our leadership. And current leaders have an influence, but it's also true that past leaders have an influence. And what do I talk about? Well, there's that wait and see approach. I remember hearing about a man who took over a tool and die shop. And very successful. He loved people. He rewarded them. He reinforced their behavior. He brought people and celebrated public successes. He was very gracious and honorable. And he said, what surprised me, as I interviewed him several years later when they won awards, he said, you know what? Even though I acted the same way from day one, people didn't believe me until year 3, 4, 5 because of how they were treated in the past. And their past treatment and their actions of previous iterations of management strongly influenced how they discounted what he was saying today. And that's true in all organizations. It's not a testimony or an indictment of your leadership. It's just how people view. They wait, they go, and maybe that person's going to turn out just like all these other managers that I've dealt with. And it's not just past treatment and actions, but it's also their reinforcing mechanisms. And often because these elements are stronger and are developed over time, they persist on organizations and they drive behavior very powerfully. But just like an iceberg, the part below the surface, we can miss it. We can miss it that's there. It's so important. So what are these structures? Well, in my first book, The Improvement Toolbox, I said there's really 4 main types of reinforcing structures. Org chart is the first one. People decisions, who gets promoted and why. The second one is performance management, performance assessments. Who's accountable for what and how they reinforced. That's very powerful. Third, KPIs and metrics. What is the organization keying on? And that's very important. It drives behavior. And finally, the whole motivational suite, recognition, rewards, compensation, incentives, those powerfully drive behavior. So those things powerfully drive, but because they take a while to set up, they often lag behind and they exist, and they often exist from years before. So that's important for you to realize as we go forward, that this time element is a part of what you're going to experience as a leader. So in reality, so if you think about culture, think of a moving average where they listen to what you say, but they're going to weight strongly how they were treated in the past. Also, the reinforcing mechanisms that were out there before. So they listen to your words, but the actions that you have, the accountability, that strongly affects behavior. But words, not so much, right? Not so much, because people are waiting to see what you actually do. And finally, if I were a leader in going through digital transformation, I'd make sure I spend my time on actions, less on words, and I drive these accountability structures because, as I said, they take a long time to set up, and they persist, and they drive, but they drift below the surface, and we miss them. And they drive behavior. So what you can get is a conflict between new and old, where the new messaging, you're trying to drive the new, but all the old behaviors are reinforced by the rewards, the recognition, incentives, the assessments, the org chart, and the KPIs. So very important to consider as you go forward into this. So that's culture. We're going to talk about that and how we're going to bring that into leadership and how you can deal with people with different viewpoints, activate your process from start to finish, accelerate time to positive outcomes, and engage talent. So that's the first. That's our first video here, the detail one. And again, digital transformation. This is culture. Now, if you're looking for all the links, they'll always be at smgknowledge.com and /DX or digital transformation. Say thanks for spending these few minutes with me, and I look forward to seeing you again.